Yeah.
All
All
right,
let's do it. Let's go.
I tell my kids, in fact, we're in a habit now, whenever we catch a bad trait, we say it ends with me. And that's so that they know that they don't have to pass this on to somebody else. And so my son every now and then say, Dad, I saw that. It ends with me.
Welcome to In the Boardroom with His Capital Group, a series of unfiltered conversations created to share our successes and failures, along with some of the tips, tricks, hacks, and strategies that we've used along the path to building wealth. So grab your favorite beverage, get to that quiet spot, and tune in to today's conversation. And remember that a legacy isn't only about leaving what you've earned, but also what you've learned.
All right, everybody. How are you? This is Rick Melero. I'm the principal of His Capital. I'm here with Daniel White. Say hello.
Hello. I am Daniel White. I am a EXP agent and have a team with Elite Listing Group, and I own an insurance company with SSW Insurance. A big part of my position here with His Capital is working on the disposition side.
And if you haven't watched episode 1 or 2, please make sure you click on those videos up there and get the valuable content that we've been putting out. We're so excited that you're here with us, and we're looking forward to imparting some great value.
I'm going to let you go first because I'm super excited to hear what this is all about. I want to know. Let's see.
Oh, man. Remember my chest
Remember,
hurts.
honesty is the best policy, okay?
That's it.
All right. So,
Yeah, so actually, this gentleman right here and I go way back. And what I mean by way back is actually, I was a freshman in high school when I first met one of the cool kids in the block. We became good friends. I was the only baby in their group, and they accepted me in. And so we known each other for many, many years. He knew me before I got in the industry.
Don't age us.
He knew us when I was in school, when I got kicked out of school. So he's got the whole story of my life. Then just fast forward into, several years later, I was already building an investment career. I've been working on real estate now for almost 20 years now, believe it or not, which is insane.
Yeah.
And turns out Daniel was in a very similar industry looking to take it to the next level. So when we connected again, it was like we had never parted as friends. So we stayed going, and now he's doing deals and helping us sell our properties. It's been awesome.
Yeah, it has. Similar story. We'll save that content for later because I can make some really good money once we get to a certain. So I'll sell that story. I'll write a book. The truth. No, I just kidding. No. Exactly right. We met in high school. You have acquaintances, and then you have friends, and it's turned into a friendship. I consider Rick outside of the business world as one of my closest friends, one of my best friends. The knowledge that he has now, it inspires me. Go back to high school. Maybe I inspired him, and the roles reversed now. So,
Inspired each other.
yeah,
That's it.
Where my place, I think, started here with His Capital was my very first deal. I was nervous. I was scared, man.
Yeah,
2012, my first house. Rick was like, let's buy 10. I'm like, no, I'm buying 2. That's it. Hindsight, I should have bought 20, right?
You should have bought.
I should have. But, that's it. He had the knowledge. I was the freshman trying to do the investments, and he was there to help guide me, and what has helped me put me in my shoes today. Mm-hmm. So awesome. I appreciate it. So absolutely. Friendship goes a long ways. Over 20 plus years.
Literally.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was through another person or I don't even remember right now if it was just social media, but we reconnected, and obviously it was like going back in a time and
a lot of laughs.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of stories. Rick, I think we reconnected because it was me reaching out on trying to figure out how to purchase the property.
Got it. Okay.
I think that's how we met back in 2012. So I graduated in 98, graduated in...
I didn't even graduate.
Okay.
I got kicked out of my house, guys. So I never finished. I got a GED.
But you're here now.
That's it. That's it.
Yeah, I love it. Well, GED's same thing, man. So I think it was in 2012 when we reconnected, when I was thinking about purchasing my very first investment property to grab some passive income, all of that good stuff. And we met at Starbucks. Favorite place to meet was Starbucks, my friend.
Yes.
Yeah. Starbucks.
White mochas are good.
Yeah. We know what each other like. So, Yeah, for me, it was, again, I spoke on it earlier. It's the knowledge, it's the understanding, it's the consistency that I see in Rick and his capital and the employees and the investors, right? That's why they continue to keep coming back, because it's consistent. In 2003, I was working at JP Morgan Chase. I was young, 24, 25 years old. I was making $67,000 a year. Thought I was a king of the world. And I had my daughter, and I was like, I don't want to live in an apartment anymore. So, and I need to have a career. I don't need to just sit here. So I interviewed a State Farm agent, a Century 21 agent, and I went to a Ford dealership and interviewed a manager there. And at the end of the day, when that day was over, I realized that I could put real estate and insurance together. And by 2006, 2007, I had my real estate license and my insurance license. And that was the end of the story. And I do not regret one moment of it. I do not regret dropping out of college. It's been fulfilling on both sides of the field. My process was there that my parents had me when they were 16 years old. When we had our first child, our daughter, I never ever wanted my kid to look at me and say that I wasn't there. So I had to make an adult decision and forget all the partying, because I had a responsibility now to take care of my daughter. We have a son now too, but taking care of my daughter at that time. And those were the fields that I was like, okay, if I've got to go get a little bit of education, I can go and do it. But I don't have 4 years, 6 years, or 8 years to go get a degree. Right. I got to do something right now. And when I went into that day in interviewing, I was only coming out with one, but I put two together and it's worked. You know, I've got a real estate team now of 17 partners. I've got 5 full-time employee licensed agents here in the state of Florida. Pretty good for a guy that doesn't have a college degree and just grinds every single day, you know? So that's my take on it.
You know, I think my first exposure to real estate, I had a really crazy experience because I was kicked out of my house. And so I had to survive because I was young and immature, and I just wanted to serve God at this point because it was a radical manifestation of God in my life. I decided to just leave my only career that I had at the moment and go into the mission field. And let me tell you, it was amazing, a great experience. But being in the real estate for 20 years, first and foremost, I have had the privilege to meet so many extremely successful people in different walks of life. Awesome guys like this man right here, business owners that have been in different facets. And one of the things that have connected all of these completely different individuals with different paths is the fact that almost all of the wealthiest people in the world actually have in their portfolio real estate, and it represents a substantial amount of value. So for 20 years, I've realized that this is just one of the most historic vehicles to create long-term wealth, to build cash flow, and to really become financially free so that you can ultimately get to the place at some point where you don't have to work, you get to, because all the expenses are covered by the return on those investments.
I agree. I think it's like one of those things where if you're an investor, right, and you've got your money in the stocks, or you got your money in a money market account or a savings account, you can always just drive by your property and be like, I own that. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, it's like generating $1,000 or $1,500, and it's rewarding, right? You know, whereas when you go by the bank at Friday at 5 o'clock, you're like, well, the stock's closed, and I guess I'm where I'm at, right? You know, so. I love the residential, the single family homes, the condos, the real estate investments. It's key. Can you tell me the story about you? I think it was when you were at a networking group. Mm-hmm. You had done maybe 5 or 6 real estate deals consistently every month. Mm-hmm. And then you sat down next to a gentleman and you guys were talking and you thought you were the king of real estate. And this guy said, really? Well, I only did 1 or 2 of these and I made da-da-da-da. That story has always stayed with me when you and I kind of talked at Starbucks over white mochas.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, that's a perfect, example of just how you can level up in the industry, and it doesn't have to be this monster scale. I was actually speaking at that event, and at the very end of the event, and I was talking about the volume we were generating in real estate, one of my colleagues actually introduced me and said, you need to meet this guy. And so I knew this guy had to be something. Yeah. But ultimately what he did was not what I was anticipating at all. Here I am, and the guy asked me the question, so what do you do? And I'm like, I've been talking about this for the last 45 minutes. You would think you would have paid attention. Right,
You
when
weren't
he-
on the same level. Yeah,
completely
obviously.
not. So clearly he was bored. And so I'm like, well, I kind of, like, once again, just kind of pushed back a little bit on what I was doing, which for my age, I mean, it was respectable, right? And I thought I was someone special. And so nobody till that moment had questioned me or challenged me the way he did. And he just looked at me in the eyes and said, oh, so you work for tips? And I have never had somebody smack me like that ever. Everyone's like, how do I do what you do? Oh my gosh, you're so young. How did you
Correct.
become so
Yep.
successful? And here's this guy just saying, you work for tips. So of course, by human nature, I was upset. I was proud, so I was upset. But the other part was, what does this guy know that I don't know, that he's that confident to call me out, you know?
Yep.
And so in that whole conversation, you know, it was a life-changing event for me, really, because what he showed me was a picture of what it really means to be an investor. I was at the time transactional. I was transacting. I only eat and I live off what I produce. What he was talking about is how he could just literally focus 2 projects a year in his passive investments, and he could live for the whole year from the return of those investments. So he's talking about a freedom of your time, something I didn't
Correct.
even understand. And here I am talking about how you have to be more valuable, you have to make more money, you have to do all these things. And this guy's talking about how, stop, what are you talking about? Like, you could just build cash flow, and the cash flow sets you free. And so it really, really just shifted my complete paradigm and the way I viewed investments, to be honest with you. And so from that moment on, in fact, I ended up working with him on a couple of deals. One of them I interned. I actually did an entire commercial building in downtown Orlando where I literally leased a restaurant space and all kinds of stuff just to learn the business. And I did it for free because I wanted to learn. Because this is another thing that I've also learned in the industry. There's a lot of people that think they have value, but they don't know what they're talking about. They have zero value in the industry, period. Right? So you got to come at this humbly. And that's really when you build wealth. A lot of people think I bring value, I deserve more. What I realize is what this guy brings to the table is more valuable than anything I could produce.
Yep.
So I need to come here humbly. I need to bring him value, and I will earn my right. One of the things that I've learned even in working with this gentleman is, you know, I could have gone there with pride and said, hey, I'm worth my cut. But I didn't bring anything to the table other than my legs, my desire, my hunger to go out there and run. And so my approach, I believe, is what made me different than most people. Most people would have come in and said, what can you give me? I went in there and said, I want to earn your trust. I want to earn your respect, and I'm going to learn in the process. So I structured a deal for a 10-year lease that probably would have had a commission of like $90,000 to $100,000.
You did it for free.
And I did it for free. Why? Because I wasn't worried about the money. What I wanted was to earn the respect and learn and bring value to the table. Now you fast forward 10 years later, instead of working for tips, getting a commission for 90 grand to lease someone's stuff because I need to get paid because I'm valuable, I am now the part owner in a 16-story building that's worth $25 million.
Yeah.
That's the difference, right? And so that day was powerful because it exposed me, and somebody was kind enough to, what I call, unplug me from society's perspective of what success really is. So
I love it, man. I'm just telling you. I mean, that's what separates the women from the girls, the men from the boys. Is that mindset, right? And something has to click. We could see it every day. We look out there, we see where people are at, and sometimes they just don't get it. They just continue to walk the path, and it's not until that moment where somebody says, "You're working for tips, man. You're working for tips. You want to come play with the big boys and the big girls? Well, this is what you need to do." And to take yourself out of, because again, at the end of the day, we all have bills to pay, all of that stuff. To take yourself out of that equation and just say, "Listen, it's all about the knowledge. It's exactly what I want to know. I want to know how you're doing it, and then afterwards, how can I do it better?"
Exactly. Right? Yeah, exactly. So when I'm looking at someone who's valuable, there's a difference between people that work for me and people that earn equity in something bigger. One of the things that I look for is consistency. We have a lot of people with the McDonald's mentality that it's got to be quick, it's got to happen. Success does not really work in that fashion, at least long-term lasting success. If you're going to build something worth building, you understand it's going to take time, it's going to take resources. So what I'm looking for is someone that is consistent, somebody that no matter how they feel, how life is going, Yes, we're going to have good days, and yes, we're going to have bad days. But how does that person react consistently regardless of how that day goes? That's essential for someone who's going to bring value. I've had people come in here that literally said, Rick, I want to earn your keys to your car. I want to have all these things. And not even 2 weeks later, they can't even hang. Why? Because they're inconsistent. So what they're going to fail at in the future is never finishing anything. And so when you want to work on something that's worth something, you need people that are going to be there all the way through to completion. The other thing that I look for, and that leads to the next point, really, there's a million things that I look for, honestly, but consistency is one. Another thing that I look for that I think is essential is there's a lot of people that start. They're really good at starting everything. I could tell you of at least 5 or 6 people in my life who were charismatic, who had all the perfect picture of what a partner or a successful person is, except the lack of consistency and the lack of completion. You see, a lot of people are starting many things, but they never finish anything. The people that finish what they start are people that you can trust to see something through all the way to completion. And that is essential in any business.
Literally, when you said it, I was like, oh my God, he's going to take my seat. He's going to take my seat. So my other trait would be willingness. Willingness to learn, willingness to educate yourself, willingness to put in the time, right? I would rather have somebody, if I had 2 people and I have somebody from Harvard that just thinks that they deserve everything, and I have somebody that is willing to learn, to educate themselves, to work as hard as it possibly takes, I'm in all day. And just continuing that education, continuing to put the best foot forward every single day. You mentioned it. We all have our ups and downs. You know, life gets in the way. We get phone calls, kids come up, parents get sick, all of that stuff. But at the end of the day, the willingness to continue to work towards your goal, I'll take that person every single day. It's tough. I will tell you, my wife jokes with me all the time, and she's like, listen, you're not saving lives. Then I respond to her and say, well, if they don't have a house to live in, living on the street, I put them in a house, I am kind of saving their life, right? You know what I'm saying? No, I'm joking, but it is tough to turn it off. It really is, because I don't know how you feel. I feel like if I do miss a day, oh my God, somebody else is going to grab the business, or, oh my God, I'm going to miss that phone call. I'm not going to be able to hand it off, So it is tough to turn it off, but you've got to learn to turn it off. You really do. Or have a partnership where you feel comfortable handing it off. Get rid of the get rich quick schemes. They do not work. They do not work. All they want is 1 million people to buy it for $20.99. That's all that they want, right? It's some good written content, some cute videos, and it's not possible to get rich unless you go pay $1 and buy a lotto ticket and you hit it the next day, right?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think really when you really think about building wealth over time, like really is seed, time, harvest. I do believe you need the knowledge, and there are people that you can learn from and even pay for some of that information, but you can't come to the table with the expectation that if I pay this amount of money and I put the work in 30 days, I'm going to get this result. Now, you may have a deal done. That I've done projects in less than 30 days. But to build wealth, to build something that you can leave a legacy, that's time, and that takes strategy, and that takes a lot of failing forward, because we're in a constant moving state where things are shifting, where there's volatility, where there's wars, where there's all types of chaos, and you have to be able to learn and adapt and position yourself to keep building and growing that portfolio that ultimately frees you financially. Now, there is one big paradigm that I believe also needs to be debunked, that for the last couple of years, several people have become very, very wealthy and rich selling this concept, which is this grind 24/7 concept, where if you grind and you grind and you grind and you grind, that then you will become a success. And if you hustle, then you're going to be rich. And so don't get me wrong, this is not about don't do anything and you'll get rich.
Yeah.
Right? You got to work.
Yeah.
But what I have learned over the years is that you need to start learning how to work smart, not as hard. So when you're hustling and you're pushing, there is a season for that where you have to start earning some revenue to be able to reinvest that. But this misconception that if you stop, you lose it all, that is the thing that we need to get rid of. That is a paradigm that we need to shift, because really over the last few years, I have started to give myself more time, more freedom. And it's given me the time to rest, to refresh my thoughts and ideas, to reposition myself, to be able to be more productive. The reason why I have those standards is because I made the room to be able to create them, which I would not have if I was hustling and grinding every day and burning out. And many of my projects that I did with this method are more productive and more successful than the ones that I did when I was doing them in haste.
You're rested.
Exactly.
Your mind is in the right spot. Yeah, exactly. And you preach that, Rick, all the time, right? In the meetings and the way that we talk, you talk about, we go back to it, right? One of your consistency,
Yeah.
right? So, I mean, you have a calendar, you have a regimen that you follow every day, whether it's waking up at 4:30 in the morning, going to the gym, grabbing your morning news and educating yourself, whatever it may be, which allows you to be productive over being busy during the week. And then on that Saturday or that Sunday, you may take a phone call here and there, but you're resting. You're not grinding 24 hours, 7 days a week, like you just said, right? Yeah,
Exactly.
no, absolutely.
Exactly. And I have clients that even right now, like they almost feel guilty. And some have actually pushed back on me and have even said, well, how could you possibly be resting? I mean, we have so much to be done. And I'm like, because I was so productive, I don't have to work today.
I try not to call you on the weekends, by the way. It's really bad. I'm like, God, he's going to be, I'm like,
No, but I have a client, I love him to death. He's such a good guy, but he is a slave. A slave. There's no other way to say it. He is a slave, and he'll reach out to me and say to do impossible things. And I'm like, no, I'm doing bigger things than you, and I'm doing less work. Why? Because I'm working smart, not hard. So the difference is you're still a slave to this guilt that says if I don't work today, then I'm not productive. And that same day that you wasted was one day you lost with your children, with your relationship with your wife, with envisioning the future, with coming up with ideas to correct your business, to make it more productive.
For me, before I opened up the insurance business, I worked for somebody. I made great money. I made 6 figures, right? Again, great opportunity, not graduated from college, just got a high school diploma, right? So I got my 2 weeks vacation a year. And, one of the things that I didn't get was like those Mondays or those holidays, right? So when I opened up my business myself and COVID came, I'm working from home. I didn't want my daughter going to her job working at Walmart anymore. So I was like, hey, why don't you come work for me? You're not going to make as much money, but we're working from home. We're being a family business and all that stuff. So we kind of sat down. And when I started that business, I wrote down everything that I love about my previous agency, everything I didn't like, and everything that I loved, I threw it away. Because these were all the things that I was going to work on and make sure that I change the process. Like my grandmother, my grandfather, they worked every single day. They grinded away. They took care of the family, all of that stuff. So I wanted to make sure that moving forward, when vacations come and holidays come, that we take those times off to be with our family. Right? Like we should not be the only ones working when 70% of America is taking the time off. Let's take the time off. Let's reflect. Let's find out. And I have caught myself on certain holidays. I'm like, we're working. The banks are open. And so my daughter has had to come up there and say, hey, Dad, you wanted to be a change. This isn't changing. And so it's nice to have that because I need somebody, because we get caught up in this is our business. This is our livelihood, right? Like we are trying to provide for everybody in our family, our employees, all of that stuff. But like you said it earlier, Rick, the mind needs a break. You got to reset, to refocus, to continue to stay productive, right? So it's my little story about where my parents worked 7 days a week, and now I've caught myself trying to do that, but my daughter's stopped and said, hey, let's take this day off. Yeah. It's a holiday. Let's enjoy it. Let's go to the beach. Let's go out to dinner. Let's hang out at the pool. Let's go for a bike ride. And at the end, it's like going to the gym, right? If you don't go to the gym one day, you're you don't feel good. You go the next day, you feel okay, right? So
Yeah.
those days, you need those times off.
Yeah, I agree. You know, I think for me, when I look back at the previous generation, there was no communication. It's not like I could sit there and talk about all these topics of life that I would at some point in the future have to face. It was like, hush, you don't talk about anything, literally. So for me, what has shifted is as I got into finance, and I'm like, well, I don't know anything about finance. Nobody taught me. Nobody talked about it.
Still don't.
Still don't talk about it.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where I've tried to make that a part of the journey, is literally talking about finances with my kids. My daughter's 12, but if you sit with her, she's already got a goal. Next year, she'll have her first rental property. Why? Because we exposed her. Her mindset now is different. We talk about what liabilities are. We talk about what assets are.
Yep.
When she wants something, we don't just give it to her, and we don't loan it to her based on her next upcoming payment that we're going to give her, because what we tell her is, hey, we don't finance consumer debt. So if you want this, you got to earn it. What are you going to do to earn it? And so those are principles that I wish would have been taught, but I had to learn them from scratch. So I think that's one essential piece for sure. The other part that I think is a healthy balance when we're talking about money and finance is realizing that money should not become our God. The moment money becomes our God, you're in trouble because you're chasing money. You will struggle. You know, there's a difference between what my time is worth and versus how many of my dollars are working for me. And that's a mindset that I would want to transfer to my kids. And the scorecard that says if I have $1 million in the bank today, that's another piece that I had to deal with. For a while, I grinded, I was making. And so now you're thinking, okay, now my identity is tied to what's in the bank account. This is my KPI. Well, what happens when the market shifts and that money gets tied up somewhere else, or you lose some of that money? Well, then you start losing your confidence. You start literally, and that has nothing to do with who I am.
Yeah.
I am who I am, period. Regardless of how much money I have, I am an asset. And so it's learning who you are, passing that on to your kids with their identity. And then lastly, just really beginning to teach them how money will come and go, but if you use it as an employee over time, it'll multiply on its own. And so I think those are the essential things for me that I want to, you know, I tell my kids, in fact, we're in a habit now, whenever we catch a bad trade, we say it ends with me. And that's so that they know that they don't have to pass this on to somebody else. And so my son every now and then say, Dad, I saw that, it ends with me.
Gotcha.
And so it's great that it's already in his mind, and he's only 9 years old.
Yeah.
To say that when I find a habit that shouldn't be, that we all know is wrong, I have the freedom and the choice to say it ends with me, so I don't have to pass this on.
With all of that being said, we finally have reached the end of this episode.
You know, we really believe in giving value, and so we hope that you will put your comments and please tell us what are some of the topics that you would like to hear more of, whether you want to hear more about investments, specific strategies, maybe some of our failures, maybe about life. Whatever you feel will be a valuable topic, please share it with us, and we'll make sure we look at it to cover it in the next videos.
Make sure you hit the like button.
If you want more additional content pertaining to real estate investments or motivation and success in life in general, check out some of the other videos that we have. I'm sure they'll be a blessing to you as well.